All right, let's call to order the regular council meeting here Monday, December 5th, 2022. We are here at the WC O'Neill Arena Complex, but also streaming through Zoom and Facebook. If anyone has any questions on anything related to tonight's agenda, please email pnopper@townofstanders.ca, and I'm sure it'll be in the comments online. We'll get into the recording of attendance. I can see that all members of council are here except for Councillor Blanchard, and Councillor Neal is joining us virtually tonight. So thank you very much, Councillor Neal, for joining us. And I will start off as well as recognizing that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskoto-Mugati people. Could I have a mover to approve the agenda as circulated this evening? I've got Councillor Hurdle and seconded by, so I'm looking right, there's only one option, and Councillor Gumashell. Any discussion or changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of approving this agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
That is everybody, and I see Councillor Neal's hand as well, so that has been approved. Disclosure of conflict of interest, any for this evening? I've got a few hands. We'll start closest to me. We'll go Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just regarding FA 22-1205, resolution for the town of St. Andrews, I'll just be sitting out for that one. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Councillor Hurdle. And then the second one was Councillor Heenan, I believe.
Yes, Your Worship. Oh, sorry. Yes, Your Worship, is PED 221206 Rose Lane.
Perfect. So I'll look for both of you to recuse yourself at that time. I believe that's all for this evening. Just giving it one last look. Yep. So that is it for this evening. We do have no presentation, so we're going to move right into the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. As I always do, I check to see, does anyone have any changes for this evening? Okay, not seeing any, so I will fly through them like I always do to save some time. This is the minutes of the 22-1107 public hearing of objections to bylaw 22-05 to impose a special business improvement levy on Monday, November 7th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Could I have a mover for that? I've got Deputy Mayor Akaji and seconded by Councillor Heenan. All in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
And that's everybody. Those have been approved. Those are small minutes because there wasn't much to discuss. The next one are the minutes of the 22-1107 regular council meeting on Monday, November 7th, 2022 at 6:43 p.m. Could I have a mover for that? I've got, looking to the right here, see if I can get maybe a screen. I got Councillor Neal. Seconder would be Councillor Heenan again. All in favor of approving these minutes, please signify by saying aye. Everybody, again, those have been carried. The minutes of the 22-11-14 public hearing of objections to Amendment MP 20-02-02 to the secondary municipal plan MP 20-02 on Monday, November 14th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Once again, I'll be looking for a mover. I've got Deputy Mayor Akaji and seconded by Councillor Hurdle. All in favor of approving these minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is everybody. Those have been carried. Next one are the minutes of the 22-11-14 special meeting of council on Monday, November 14th, 2022. That was at 6:45 p.m. Could I have a mover for those particular minutes? I've got Councillor Heenan, seconded by Councillor Gumashell. All in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye. And that's everybody. And we're in the final ones. This is the minutes of the 22-11-21 regular council meeting on Monday, November 21st, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Same routine. A mover, please. Got Deputy Mayor Akaji and seconded by Councillor Hurdle. All in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Your Worship.
That's everybody. All of our minutes have been approved. Communications, nothing this evening, so we'll jump right into staff reports and the financial report. That'll be presented by our CAO, Mr. Chris Spear. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, with an eventful year winding down, collectively we can catch our breath and prepare for the future. This following is a summary of last month's activity. Under Council, as the writing of this report, we've elected 3 new councillors to help shape the future of Bayside, Shamcook, and St. Andrews. Congratulations to Mark Bennett, Annette Harland, and Daryl Weir for putting their names up and acquiring the votes. The swearing-in ceremony is planned for Thursday, December 15th at the Heather Curling Club, with the public invited. One of the initiatives that Council is considering is the hiring of an economic development officer for the town. Other local municipalities have staff already fulfilling this function who aggressively market their communities to attract new business and investment. Now that the expanded local government includes the Bayside Industrial Park, the Knowledge Park concept, and other lands for opportunities, it seems the proper time to have a staff member actively focused on this while assisting with the current plans of the business community. Bridle Path, Inc., the proposed development at 256-260 Water Street, is revisiting its concept, considering the debate and instruction from Council last month. The secondary municipal plan amendment that was requested to allow a height exemption is currently on hold to see if a new proposal is brought forward. The developer has been encouraged to stay within the planning bylaws of the town as much as possible. With the Christmas holidays so close to the first council meeting in January, there is a motion to move the regular council meeting so the council and staff can prepare for them accordingly. We are anticipating the meeting for December the 12th will be the last meeting of this year, with the swearing-in ceremony happening later that week. Under administration, during the last weekend of November, I was able to attend the Fall Firefighters Conference put on by the Departments of Local Government, Public Safety, and the Fire Marshal's Office. Predominantly aimed at fire department volunteers, there were three key takeaways. Training, in collaboration with the NBCC and Fire Marshal's Office, is being streamlined so those only involved in driver operating and or vehicle extrication do not have to take the full course. It should be noted there's close to 200 hours of training needed to achieve the Firefighter Level 1 certification. The province is working on minimum requirement standards to ensure all apparatus, province-wide, meet suggested requirements. Town Council has been proactive to invest in our department, so I believe we will meet the regulations for most of our large equipment. And the third takeaway was there's a disconnect between the Fire Marshal's Office, municipal staff, and councils. The provincial fire marshal acknowledges that his office has not done a good job of communicating high-level challenges and is committed to rectifying that. I reiterated that point to the room and advised him that this is a necessity that local governments be brought into the conversation to allow for better planning, provide financial resources, acquire knowledge of the issues, and assist the departments, especially those with no salaried staff, with more assistance. On December 3rd, Christmas by the Sea kicked off with the mayor's tree lighting. I guess it got moved to the 4th. Then the firemen's Christmas parade and the skate with Santa was on the 4th, or the 3rd. This coming weekend, starting Thursday the 8th, right through till Sunday the 11th, the 3rd annual Sparkle by the Sea is taking place with entertainment, sales, and a market at the Char and Chowder restaurant. Be sure to finish off your holiday shopping by supporting local businesses. Council formed a new trail committee last month to bring the stakeholders together. There are various issues on the table, including Phase 2, proper signage, and ongoing maintenance. We will get together in December to start the process and hopefully provide recommendations to the council towards the end of the winter. The recruitment for the recreation manager continues with the application intake, which closed on November 30th. We anticipate interviews in December and have a job offer to the successful candidate by the end of the year. Although this is the third recruitment for the position, we received more candidate submissions than before. I wish to thank Scotiabank for completing their building project and getting most of the scaffolding down before our Christmas events. For various reasons, out of the control of the local branch, the project lagged for several months longer than anyone anticipated. However, we are happy to see the project completed for the year and that their roof has been refurbished. For services, from the staff's perspective, once the summer surge is over, we are able to focus on administrative functions more earnestly, including planning, policy updates, and funding application. Staff has submitted several applications, including to the Environment Trust Fund, Celebrate Canada, and the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund. It is vitally important we chase down various forms of funding available to allow us to invest taxpayer money in projects that are not normally covered. For instance, fire trucks, public works vehicles, and equipment replacement within our water and wastewater system. With the restrictions related to the pandemic mostly being lifted, we are happy to see more activity at the arena, including the Veterans Cup in November and the Andrew Bartlett Memorial Tournament this past weekend. With a slowdown in the user group towards the end of the month, we will be offering discounted family skate rentals, much like the bubble skates we had, to those that may be interested. More information will be forthcoming on our social media and posters within town. The utility department finished up the current year's projects in November, including expanding the SCADA system. which electronically remotely monitors our water and wastewater system and includes sending out texts and warnings if something is not functioning normally. I wish to acknowledge our fire department's further activities in December, including helping stage the parade and putting on Skate with Santa. In addition to the life-saving services that they offer to the community, they volunteer for community events outside their normal scope of services for many years. Your dedication is noted and appreciated. I would also like to thank the local Mad Canada chapter for donating a bench that is currently placed across from the Deputy Mayor's residence in the little park near the shore at Indian Point Park. With the holidays, it is certainly a good time to remind everyone to refrain from impaired driving. In a close-knit community like St. Andrews, all of us should be able to find a designated driver to return us from our holiday celebrations. On behalf of the staff and myself, I would like to wish the citizens, mayor, and council a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. 2023 promises to be a year of change, but through open communication and a respect for varying opinion, we will work together to make our community stronger. Respectfully submitted, Chris Spear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spear. Appreciate it as always. And attached, council has all of the different staff reports. Anything that you wish to highlight, Mr. Spear, on the financial report at this time?
Just, Your Worship, we'll be preparing this week for your meeting next week, projections for the end of the year. So it'll be a little more in tune to what is going to happen from our standpoint, at least this close to the end of the year.
Sounds good.
So far, so good. That we weren't, with the overruns, as we said before, we're not that concerned that we'll be going into a deficit position.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Spear. Any questions from any member of council? Okay, I'm seeing none. I'll look for a mover to accept the staff reports as presented. I've got Councillor Gumashall and seconded by Councillor Neal. We've already asked any questions, so I'll call the question. All in favor of accepting these reports, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And that's everybody, so those reports have been accepted. Thank you once again, Mr. Spear, and thank you to all staff for submitting those. It's a good way to keep us and the public up to date. We're going to get into the introduction and consideration and passing of bylaws. The first one, I'll give, I guess, Councillor Hurdle just a moment. And yeah, we'll kick it off with Finance and Administration with the Deputy Mayor, Kate Akachi.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. FA 221205. Banking resolutions for the town of St. Andrews 2022, also 2023. So the background is this. As part of our banking arrangements, the town can access 2 lines of credit for the general and utility operating funds, 4 term loans for capital projects, and a Visa card account with a limit of $20,000. The lines of credit are regulated within the Local Governance Act, and the term loans were authorized through previous applications to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board. The term loans are taken out during construction and then repaid when long-term debentures are issued. So the motion is this. Be it moved that the mayor or deputy mayor and the treasurer or the assistant treasurer are hereby authorized to borrow on behalf of the town of St. Andrews from the Bank of Nova Scotia from time to time by way of a promissory note, a sum or sums not exceeding any one time $225,000 to meet current expenditures of the general operating fund, and $666,000 to meet current expenditures of the utility operating fund of the corporation of the year 2022 and 2023. I so move this, Your Worship.
Thank you. Seconder for that one. I've got Councillor Gumashall quick on the ball. Again, it's because you're the only one on the right, I think. So, any discussion on this particular motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That is everybody, and we'll bring Councillor Hurl back. And
No, there's one more, Your Worship.
oh, sorry, it's a double one, is it?
Yes.
I was just kidding. Yeah, there we go.
Be it moved that the mayor or deputy mayor and the treasurer or the assistant treasurer are hereby authorized to borrow on behalf of the town of St. Andrews from the Bank of Nova Scotia from time to time by way of a promissory note, a sum or sums not exceeding any one time $400,000 for the construction of the Van Horn Trail, $200,000 for short-term financing of the Van Horn Trail, $1,300,000 for wharf reconstruction, $750,000 for short-term financing for the wharf reconstruction, and $1,214,000 for infrastructure projects on Cornelia Street, Princess Royal Street, and Sophia Streets. And I so move this, Your
Thank you. A
Worship.
seconder for that one. I've got Councillor Heenan. Any discussion on this one? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's everybody. That has been carried. And now we can invite Councillor Hurdle back. I got a little too excited to have him back.
You were missing him.
Missed him, yeah.
All right, my second one is FA 221207. And it's council meetings for January 2023. Background, as part of the procedural bylaw 16-03 or 03, any changes to the dates of the regular council meetings need to be adjusted by motion. Under Section 6 of the bylaw, regular meetings take place on the first and third Mondays of the month. Staff will not be in the office until January 3rd. The first meeting will be missed. It is recommended that council make the following adjustments to the January 2023 meeting schedule. Workshop with new council, January the 9th, 2023. Official first regular council meeting, January the 16th, 2023. The schedule would keep council in line with the first and third Mondays of the month process and give some orientation time with the new council. So the motion is this, that council supports the January 2023 regular council meeting schedule with the following meetings. January the 9th, 2023 would be the council workshop, and the second one would be January the 16th, 2023, our first regular council meeting of 2023. And I so move this, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Appreciate that. A seconder. Councillor Gubichel. All right, any discussion on this one? It is just kind of procedural around the bylaw, obviously. Okay, all in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is everybody, so that has been approved as well. So that will wrap up Deputy Mayor Akaji. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
You're welcome.
And this evening, the role of Councillor Blanchard will be played by Councillor Hurdle, making his performance debut for Public Works. Go ahead, Councillor Hurdle.
Those are big shoes to fill. I don't know if I can do it. This is in reference PW 221207, and the subject is the street name request for Van Horn Garden Home Subdivision. Under bylaw number 69, subdivision bylaw for the town of St. Andrews, section 5 states, quote, name of streets in subdivision are subject to the approval of council. And the background, the streets in town have themes of British royalty or of historic significance within the town of St. Andrews. The developer, Mr. Charlie Bourgeois, has requested that the street name for the Van Horn Garden Home subdivision be Adeline Lane, and I believe that's misspelled in here, so I guess it's just an amendment to Adaline. Adeline Lane. Miss Lucy Adeline, or quote, Addie Van Horn, was the daughter of Sir William Van Horn and was well respected in St. Andrews for her contributions to the community. The motion before us is that council approves the street name, Adeline Lane, as per bylaw number 69, a subdivision bylaw for the town of St. Andrews for the Van Horn Garden Home subdivision at the corner of Bar Road and Mount Drive.
Thank you. You're going to move that one? Okay,
So
moved by
moved.
Councillor Hurdle, seconded by Deputy Mayor Akaji. Any discussion on this one? It is a friendly amendment. I don't think we need to go through the formality of it. So there's no go ahead.
Sorry, I do have one thing to mention. I acknowledge and thank Mr. Bourgeois for attempting to find a name that's obviously in keeping with the community itself and in the subdivision itself. I guess the devil's advocate here again, as I tend to find myself in often. There's a darker side to the legacy of the Canadian Pacific Railway at the end of the 19th century, that when William Van Horn was president, that I think we should acknowledge that there was the expropriation of indigenous lands into questionable treaties at that time that even today continue to negatively impact the socioeconomic health of indigenous communities. As well, in the late 19th century, Canadian Pacific Railway was involved in 15,000 Chinese immigrant laborers were brought in to do the work, often in harsh conditions with little pay. Tragically, unfortunately, many and preventively, many lost their lives that time. So before we name anything new after the Van Horns, I just would like to see that possibly some more educational information on the impact of that legacy on Indigenous and immigrant communities.
Perfect. So what I'm hearing there, is that a motion to table? Because you'd like to get some more information?
If the name is set, then yeah, I'd like to table if we could, see if there's an educational, maybe something.
Sounds good. I don't think we have a plan B tonight, so I think probably the best thing to do based on what your comments would be to make only if you want to, a motion to table, and then staff can come back and have an opportunity to maybe provide comment. Is that does that make sense to you?
I guess I don't disagree with anything Councillor Hurtle is saying. He's brought up some good points. I'm not exactly sure what next steps are if you're opposed to the name of Adeline for the reasons you've mentioned and want to come up with a different group way of names, or I guess I'm not really entirely sure what our next step of staff is.
Not necessarily opposed. I just would like to see if we do go with the names that there would be some context provided if possible. I know it's just a street name and it would show up on a street sign, but there is a darker side of the legacy that I would like to see possibly, at least brought to the light.
Okay. So I think maybe, again, table is what and then we'll circle back on that. Do I have a seconder? I've got Councillor Gumashall seconding. So we've got a mover and a seconder. Any conversation about the motion to table? And then I'll call the question. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I will call the question. All in favor of tabling, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And just waiting on council. That's everybody. So we have tabled that, and we will circle back on a follow-up meeting once the staff's had an opportunity to take your comments, which are very well said. So we'll move on to the next one, Councillor Blanchard / Hurtle.
I got all nervous about that. I lost my place. Give me 1 second. Okay. Thank you very much. This is a PW 221208, and the subject is Update of Environmental Advisory Committee Terms of Reference and Member Appointments. The background is, with local governance reform coming forward for January 2023, the Environmental Advisory Committee for the Town of St. Andrews wanted to update their terms of reference. Updates to the terms of reference include update the committee mandates based on strategic plans and policies, geographical area extension to Bayside and Chamcook, updating the composition of the committee specifically with more defined roles of the chair, vice chair, and secretary roles. In addition, provided for council's approval is the appointments of the members to the committee. There will be opportunities to fill vacant member spaces in the near future. It is anticipated that the committee will gain additional members from Bayside and Chamcook. It is also recommended that following best practices, terms be assigned and renewed. So the motion before us is that council accepts the updated terms of reference for the Environmental Advisory Committee for the Town of St. Andrews as of December 5th, 2022, and I so move.
Thank you very much. And a seconder, Councillor Heenan, very quickly. Any discussion on this motion? Deputy Mayor Akagi.
Have the new councillors been asked if they would like to be on this committee, where they're coming in from Bayside and Chamcook?
They have, and I do note, though, that...
I know that Councillor Blanchard has done a great job, but, you say that you can add more people. Were they asked?
They weren't specifically asked that I'm aware of, unless staff did. I don't believe they've had an opportunity yet, but I will note that there was people at it from Chamcook. I'm seeing some new members from Chamcook.
Through you, council, the new councillors haven't been informed yet, as we are still dealing with this council. In the new year, the Environmental Advisory Committee will actually be presenting to this council as the whole. At that point, if there's other councillors that wish to be a part of it, they're welcome to. They just note that the terms of reference only allows for up to 10 people on the committee, so it would have to be if Councillor Blanchard wanted an alternate or if he wanted to step down. There are options there, but I think with other committees that have come forward, like the Trail Committee and aspects like that, there might be other committees that come out of Chamcook or Bayside. That's yet to be determined, so I don't think there's any limitation on council participation.
And I think the other thing is we could probably consult with the with the committee themselves and see if they would mind an 11th member, because we could just change the terms of reference to add one of them in if they were very passionate about joining, or for that matter, any member of council before me, should they want to join.
Or like Mr. Knopper said, they could be the alternate from
Exactly.
Mr. Blanchard if he was unable to be there. He's done such a great job, but I just wondered if the new councillors had been involved.
They
Thank you
have
very
not
much.
to date, no.
And thank you, Mr. Knopper.
Okay, anything else on this one?
Just one thing I talked to Mr. Knopper about too, the committee can be made up to 12 additional members, or 12 members plus the 2 ex officio, or the 10 plus 2 ex officio, and there's currently 8. It's starting to grow rather big. I'm just wondering if we should freeze it at the 8 plus 2? 8 plus 2, there's 8 that are being nominated plus 2 ex officio, so it's 10, but they could add up to 2 more members. It's a supersized
I
committee.
think maybe till we hear maybe it's something we do in the future, but until we hear from the new councillors, to Deputy Mayor Akaji's point, maybe we just leave it status quo for now. Does that make sense, just to give the flexibility?
It was just a recommendation. It's kind
Yeah.
of on the top side of busy, and they are working well together, but as you start growing, it becomes more inefficient sometimes.
I think we've all been around boards with more numbers. Sometimes it makes it, harder to get consensus and decisions, for sure. Unless, someone else feels the same way, I'm fine leaving as is till we hear from the other councillors. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. Anything else on this one? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye. And that's everybody that's been approved. We're on to the next one.
And this motion is that council appoints the following persons to be members of the Environmental Advisory Committee for the Town of St. Andrews effective January 1st, 2023. Council and staff, Councillor Mark Blanchard, ex officio, Paul Knopper, clerk, senior administrator, ex officio, and members Kaylin Maurer, 1-year term, Jesse Davies, 1-year term, Todd Ross, 1-year term, Brian Glebe, 1-year term, Helen Gurley-Smith, a 2-year term, I'm going to say this, Signa, am I right? Signa Anderson, 2-year term, Danny Denorin, a 2-year term, and Siobhan Neal, 2-year term, and I so move.
Perfect seconder for that one. Councillor Heenan. Any discussion on this motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye. And that is everybody, so that has been approved. Thank you to all of those individuals for raising their hand. The Environmental Advisory Committee has been actually a pretty well-oiled machine for us, providing a lot of suggestions and feedback. And I guess before we move on, is there any other committees we should add Mark Blanchard to, since he's not here? Probably get him on a few things this evening.
Did everybody
Okay,
hear him?
Mike wasn't on? Okay. Well, Councillor Neal, could you hear Councillor Hurdle?
I can, yes.
Okay. You're good.
Sounds a little bit choppy at times, so I may have missed you asking me, but yeah, for the most part, I'm hearing everything.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so that will wrap up those motions. So we have nothing under public safety, business, tourism, heritage, culture, but we do, we don't have anything under recreation, community services. So that does move us right along to Councillor Heenan for planning and economic development. And you are going to declare a conflict on this one, so we'll give you a minute to recuse yourself.
Your worship, Mr. Spear was going to do the summary anyway of the report.
The summary of the report? Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so at this time, we'll pass it over to Mr. Spear, who has got a staff report attached to give a quick summary for our knowledge and as well as the public's.
Thank you, Worship. So we're talking about Rose Lane. Yeah. Keep going? I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we're talking about Rose Lane, of course, at the bottom of Burr Road. So there's been questions on development and subdivisions along there, and even simple subdivisions of putting on a couple of lands without large development. But because of our subdivision bylaw and the Community Planning Act, it's running into some practical matters that are above or over and above any approvals we can do. So currently, Rose Lane is approximately 600 meters in length with a width of 13 meters, which doesn't meet our present-day standards for municipal streets, which is 20 to 25 meters. And in order to put in these lots, the roads have to be addressed. They have to be widened, and it's something that has to be considered about this extra long length. So within the province, we follow the best practices of the Department of Transportation guidelines, and also within our own subdivision bylaw. And the width of the roads is supposed to be at least 20 meters, and as of today, they're even recommending 24 meters, but that's not only reconditioning the roads an issue, but we probably would need to impose on other people's property, because I don't think the easement that was set up back in the 60s is wide enough to put that type of road there. But another problem that we're running into is that a cul-de-sac is only supposed to be at the end of a road no longer than 200 meters. That's only a third of the way down. And so there's a solution somewhat to that. But the most, well, not the most important thing, but one of the conditions of the subdivision bylaw too is that if a developer wants to develop land off a street that doesn't meet the standards under a bylaw, it's up to the developer to meet that, not the taxpayer. And so all of that kind of has to come into council's perception of this. It doesn't mean that there can't be shared costs. It's just that it's not an automatic that the council has to bring roads up to standard if someone is deciding that they want to subdivide it or do development along it, that it has to be negotiated with the town. Another issue that we know along there is stormwater, and that it isn't properly laid out. There is a stormwater system, but if you're going to add all that asphalt, possibly widen, a stormwater management plan would have to be done, and possibly new infrastructure put in place to address it. So in talking also to our planning officers, and the Director of Planning, Alex Henderson's online with us, and can answer more maybe in a few minutes, but unfortunately, Rose Lane, it's in the residential growth area, but it's on the outer edge of the residential growth area. And we've seen from developments within town that most newcomers want to be close to the downtown core. And there's also good green reasons and good planning reasons to try to consolidate and keep things close. That, although we don't want to say we have urban sprawl in St. Andrews, you're trying to prevent that type of thing, you know, where you have to extend services to across a whole bunch of unserviced lots that are really expensive and to a lot of sense impractical. So moving forward, there's several things we can look at. In an immediate term, the cul-de-sac can be solved because they can go at the end of the 200 meters and put a cul-de-sac, which would allow all the land in front of it, so between the Bar Road and the cul-de-sac, to be developed. But that still leaves 2/3 of the road undeveloped. But even if we were to do that, the road needs to be upgraded, and it's so narrow that if a plow truck went down and met another vehicle, one of them would have to back up off the road to get out of the way, and that would also go for our fire trucks. So there's kind of a life urgency down there, you know, planning that we've got to be awful careful of, that we just can't agree to subdivide or try to change the laws to get around it. That the road is really, because of its length, is a concern. There's also a third thing that the developers talked about, and that was to come up with a long-term plan to address the challenges. And that would be basically to plan that we could, essentially from what I envision, is go at the end of Rose Lane and connect it to Diana Drive across that property, so it turns it into a road with an exit and an entry. It doesn't necessarily have to be done in the short term, but there'd have to be, that if council, and again, back to the, future plans and the scheme bylaw we talk about, if, you could put something like that in place and they could start to approve sums, but there has to be a legitimate interest in that within a certain amount of time that you're going to develop that area accordingly, not that you just do it on paper and go. Maybe it'd be a good time if Alex is up to it, just to talk about that concept a little more in planning terms.
Yeah, Chris, if you can hear me.
Yep,
I
we're
just hope
good.
I don't get too choppy here due to the connection. So what you were talking about is the idea of providing a future street connection to the end of Rose Lane, in addition to widening Rose Lane to accommodate a new subdivision off of it. The problem here, as Chris pointed out, is that Community Planning Act stipulates that anybody who's wishing to subdivide land off of a certain street and add a street to that street, they're required to bring the street that they're proposing to create and the street connecting to their new street up to municipal standards at that time. And so any subdivision that happens off Rose Lane, the onus falls on the subdivider to bring that whole street up to municipal standards. So as Chris said, the length of Rose Lane is too long, the width is too narrow. And so all that land, some of which falls in our the future growth area on the municipal plan, all of that land basically is currently non-subdividable, non-developable in the short term. The goal would be potentially for council to look at a plan to connect Rose Lane to Diana Drive, provide some traffic connectivity, and in principle, provide a future way for Rose Lane to have a second exit and meet the subdivision bylaw. So there could be a development scheme bylaw, as Chris said, which does this in phases as the demand warrants. And in temporary and short-term sense, you could have turnarounds to accommodate emergency vehicles, plow trucks, as we talked about. So you get there in phases, and those temporary turnarounds could be done. But this will require council to look at this area in an area-wide sort of sense and take an involvement with the planning of this whole future growth area, including Rose Lane, which does, if you look at the municipal plan, it's just on the boundary of the future growth area. So it's a future layout of streets in that area. It's something which council could do, and with support planning staff and the town public works, there's a sense that we could probably provide something to council.
Nope, I think we held up to the end, so thank you, Alex. And so I guess at this point, like I said, there's a couple of different developers that have come at various times. I guess there's two ways council could advise staff on this, is really, we could go back to the future developers and say, well, here's the challenges and here's the regulations, that if you want to come up with a longer term plan, then come back to us and the council will consider it. Or if you give us direction that you want to start down the road of trying to figure out a long-term plan to developing that whole area. But again, there's significant money that's going to be required down there in order to do it, just because of the length and the road. We've looked at that connector Diana to Rose in the past, and we're talking $1 million plus probably to finish that easily.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Spear, for the summary, as well as Mr. Henderson as well. Council, I have some questions, but I'm sure you might as well. I don't know if anyone wants to go first. I don't mind. Question for you. Even if council was to consider this and say it was to connect to Diana, would that put us on like a shot clock where we had to have that done within a certain period of time? Or would that just be that if we do any future development, we would have to connect it at that point?
I would have to go to legal for that. I mean,
Okay.
There'd have to be a legitimate effort, I would think, that it's just not playing with it on paper, that there's a phased-in plan. I don't know if there's a timeline, if Alex can comment on that, but, we'd have to have something more than just, putting it on paper and calling it a day.
Perfect. And just to be clear, because he's been very public and he's probably welcoming this conversation, does Mr. Hanson require more subdividing, or is he already subdivided and ready to go for all of his lots for the way that he'd like to sell them?
He's never brought anything to me in the last little while, so I'm not sure if Mr. Henderson can comment on if there is a subdivision plan off of Rose Lane on the north side of it.
Because I guess my follow-up question related to that is if he is subdivided, how was he able to have his land unless it was somehow grandfathered in? And Mr. LeBlanc has to go through this process just out of curiosity.
I don't think Mr. Has had his land subdivided in the recent history, that it might have been a few years ago prior to more professional services maybe, but I'd have to go back and see. Although having said that, looking at the zoning map, that's still just one large parcel of land right now.
So in order for him to sell, this is something that's ongoing for him as well. Now, there was conversation of putting another road in behind. Is there an opportunity where, my understanding is, and again, Mr. Hanson can come in, but I was under the impression Mr. Hanson, and maybe the planning office can add in here, was looking at potentially putting in his own roadway with a cul-de-sac. And if that's the case, is there an opportunity versus going all the way up to Diane? Is there an opportunity for Mr. Hanson to put in his road and then it loops down and connects to Rose Lane, so it does like the letter U? And would that make the requirement so we don't have to make a commitment on that future growth area? Because if we say we're going to Diana, it's going to handcuff us on what we do there, because we'll have to always find a way. And then does that make a bunch of cul-de-sacs off that? And the other thing I'll just say is, from a budget from this council perspective, is I question if we have the financial means at this particular time to take on such a project. We just made a major investment in housing, as we know, in this past year. So I guess my question is
There's lots of options, so if he
Yeah.
can build a road on the upper part of his property, kind of dissecting between Diana Drive and Rose Lane, then yes, that's another option to be able to make it all work.
so you there, and that would leave the town future development area all on its own, just as another way of looking at it. I think you had some questions, Councilor Hurdle, maybe? I think I
Yeah.
beat you to it.
Well, I guess my question, Rose Lane is a public road, just to make that clear.
Correct.
So is there, get my words in order here, is there like a legal expectation of servicing on that road? Like, is there a certain amount of, is it our responsibility to make it 20 meters across? Is there an obligation? Because there are houses on there now.
Yeah, and from my understanding and talking to other municipalities and the Department of Transportation Infrastructure, this is a common occurrence, and especially as it's written in our bylaw, it is not our responsibility, from my understanding. And though, I guess that's all I can say beyond that. I had a similar question that I had asked, and they say this is a common occurrence. But again, maybe the original creation of that road wasn't a great idea, or maybe it was only to one or two pieces of property, which I think it was, and so it handled that. But as they start developing and then increasing the need for the standards, then the question becomes, is the taxpayer responsible for that up front?
Right, yeah, that's a good question. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions on this one? Deputy Mayor Ackergy.
Can they do it like a one-way street? Like, go to just one way and then they come out the other way and go around? No.
Well, regardless of what direction it does, it still needs to be 20 meters wide, for 2 lanes of traffic.
Go ahead, Councilor Hurdle.
Just one final question, because it looks like from the letter itself, all he's asking for is permission to survey. Is he asking for more than beyond
Well,
that?
to subdivide. And so this is what we'd call a simple subdivision, meaning they just take a piece of land and cut it in half,
Right.
as opposed to, sometimes we think subdivision, we think of, like 20 housing lots being built. But unfortunately, all the same laws apply, irregardless.
Thank you.
Perfect. And, sorry, the distance was 200 meters, is that correct?
Yes.
Is this particular area around Dante and Madison, is that greater than 200 meters, just to be clear?
It's right on the edge. When I did it on Google Maps, I think it intersects with that particular developer's land, so he might be able to work that out. But that's just one part of the equation. But if in theory, we'd have to look at it closer, but I think they could probably build a cul-de-sac, and if the road could be upgraded, then I'm assuming the Planning Commission would feel better, the Regional Service Commission feel better about allowing or approving the subdivision plan.
But in the same sense, it'd be a little awkward just to do a cul-de-sac 200 meters down and then extend it. It's kind of like we got a third of the way there, right? I wonder, again, I don't know anything of the cost, but from my understanding, Mr. Hanson himself was looking to put a road in. I wonder if there's an opportunity to kind of make up the letter U here and what that looks like, if it's cheaper or not. And the other thing is, I'd really like to have a formal offer, because there's more than one developer on what they're going to do to assist this, because it is taxpayers' money. But it might be worth a conversation to do the letter U. But I don't know about you, Council. I'm really hesitant to make a commitment going to Diane at this particular time, but I'd like to get some consensus on that.
We don't have the finances right now.
Yeah. Councillor Gumashell, is your mic on? Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. My ears perked up when I heard the mention of a residential development scheme. You got to think back. We were fortunate to have town staff years ago, Keith Robichaud and Jacques Dubé, come up with the subdivision plan. And if you're going to go on Google Maps and have a look, you can see that the subdivision is probably the densest place for particularly families to live in St. Andrews. I mean, thank God for the subdivision. We probably wouldn't be in a position to have a school. That's where the school buses stop when they come to town. That's where most of the families in town live. Without subdivision St. Andrews, the demographics would be very different, and we'd live in a very different community. Having said that, when you look at the overhead of Rose Lane, Diana, the subdivision, there's a big space there and multiple developers. And when you start thinking about like a long-term plan, I think I like pictures. If we could get some potential phased-in drawings done, maybe in partnership or in collaboration with some of these developers, we could come up with a long-term plan that looked like basically more subdivision going through there, which would, like that's over the dog park, over trail in there. Like there's things that are there that would need to be preserved or moved, and so long-term planning, I think, is what's needed here, and that's where folks like Mr. Henderson's expertise come in. So I'd be in favor of trying to partner to come up with some long-term plans for that whole area. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Well said, Councillor Gumashell. And the other thing I will, on a follow-up of that, is put council consideration. Is this a conversation that we should be having with the other three councillors as well? Because that's a major initiative. It's strategic. They're here in literally a month's time as well. Just something to bear in mind as well, because in order for that plan to go ahead, it would be a significant amount of investment from the town. Doesn't mean we're doing it. We're just having a plan for a future date, to Councillor Gumashell's point, but it's a significant decision. Councillor Hurdle?
Well, will we be having a priority planning session at some point? And we could add it to the list of things and maybe we vote on it, see where it falls on.
Yeah, we will. We'll be having that probably in March, I believe, or March, April.
April, yeah.
April. So we're kind of going to do what we did the last time. We all had 3 or 4 months in our seat, got used to the procedural bylaw, some of the main documents, and understood where council was and where they're headed. And then we will be planning to do a strategic priority session for sure. And it's important to do anyway, because a lot of the strategic priorities that we set, we've actually made some progress on it, right? So I think ours would look a little different too at this particular time, but that's a good question.
In Your Worship, really, what brought this forward was a letter from one of the landowners, and he wasn't asking for any investment by the town. He was really asking why he can't make do the survey or subdivide it. I think that we can list some of the reasons we have listed here and the challenges for him to get in touch with the planning offices to get a better understanding of it, but that at the end, we've got to come up with a plan, whether it's, between the adjacent landowners, who I'm sure know each other, and then with the town. And, that'll be well into early next year before that process even gets going. So we can reply to the developer, or really just the property owner who wants to split his land with the challenges, and then have conversations with them after Christmas about what route we could go to fix it or to bring it forward.
Perfect. And in fairness to the gentleman that wrote the letter, it is kind of different to hear that people already have houses down there, they're built, an ambulance and fire truck already has to go down there, and if you want to subdivide your land and put a couple more houses down there, they can't for safety purposes. It's kind of, you know what I mean? It kind of goes, it's kind of different, because there's literally a house on each side of Rose Lane already. So, but I understand that to turn a fire truck around on that Rose Lane, I think would be quite a difficult task right now. I think at this particular time we need more information, quite frankly. Maybe Mr. Hanson himself would be up for kind of connecting it through his property to make a loop, right? So, And then I believe that would bring the cost down significant. If he's willing to put a road in, I'm assuming he's willing to invest in it as well. So, maybe there's an opportunity for him to share with us exactly what his plans are and what his guarantees are that are associated with it, if that makes sense to council. Does that seem as a next step? But again, someone feels differently. I just don't think we're quite ready to say that we're going to connect this to Diana Drive right now. Is that a safe consensus from everybody? Okay, does that work for you, Mr. Spear, Mr. Knopper?
Sure does. And just to reiterate, Your Worship, is, this isn't really a staff or council decision easily from the standpoint of the laws are from the province and the guidelines. And so we're just enforcing what's in place today. And we can't speak to what was allowed, in the past. We just got to follow what's the policies and regulations are today to move forward.
It's true. I'm familiar, and I'm sure a lot of people are, of files that are even in the LSDs. Like in Bayside, there was a road that was going to be transferred to the province. The local landowners had to bring it up to code, and it was quite a process involved around that as well. So it's not a St. Andrews thing as much as it is, to your point, a provincial thing. So, all right. At this point, I think we can bring Councillor Heenan back. And, he's, or someone should check on him. But while we're waiting for him, I just want to confirm something with Mr. Spears. We're not going to close session, correct? No, okay. So that'll be for the next one, the thing we do. Okay. So there is no new business this evening, so that brings us into question period. We've got a packed audience. Vicky Hogarth, do you have any questions? No questions this evening. Was there anything submitted online?
No questions submitted online.
No, anyone running cameras tonight have any questions? No? Okay. So no questions. So that brings us to Councillor and Deputy Mayor's comments. Any Councillor or Deputy Mayor? Deputy Mayor, actually.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. To thank, as we have before, the fire department for a super job on the parade. It was excellent. And to the businesses downtown, they really did a lot to promote St. Andrews, and I think that's one of the longest parades that we've had in St. Andrews. So kudos to the fire department. And I do want to mention we are going to try and have more drumming workshops. The first one was filled up in November, and we are going to have a couple in February, but right now they are full, so please don't call me. Don't text me. They are full unless you want to get on a waiting list. I haven't had anybody drop out yet, so we're trying for the 18th and 19th of November, correct, Mr. Knopper? Oh, February, sorry. Did I say November again? February 18th and 19th, and it will be here at the W.C. O'Neill Arena. So there is no cost, but we ask for a donation to the St. Stephen University Truth and Reconciliation course. And to date, we have had almost, I think it's $3,000 to $5,000, somewhere over $3,000 that we have collected through our Truth and Reconciliation promotions that we've done on the 30th of September, and then the drumming workshop. So kudos to the people for donating for Truth and Reconciliation and residential schools and everything. So thank you very much, and look forward to letting you know more about in the new year about the drumming workshop. Thank you very much, Your
Thank you very much. Councillor Gumashell, I saw your hand.
Thank you, Worship. Just briefly, I'd like to personally thank Fire Captain Steve Neal and Fire Chief Terrio for responding to my report of some thick black smoke on Water Street last Saturday night. They came right away and hiked up and down the street until they found the source of the thick black smoke. Their dedication and perseverance is certainly appreciated by myself, my family, and all the folks who are fortunate enough to call St. Andrews home. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Any other member of council? Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship and Council, just a big kudos to our town staff, especially the outside workers who have done a phenomenal job over this holiday season so far. The town looks absolutely extraordinary. We know that from Facebook postings and from Zooms and everything else. It's fabulous and it's immaculate, and I thank you very, very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, I've got just a few. I will echo the deputy mayor's comments. It was definitely a festive weekend in St. Andrews. A lot was happening. The Skate with Santa was a huge success. So again, thank you to the St. Andrews Fire Department for taking the lead on that. But as well, the Kiwanis were there, running the canteen, offering some service. But the town staff in general as well, not just for the organization of that, but the town looks absolutely incredible. And Public Works deserves a lot of applause for that. And as well, there was the tree lighting, so the lobster trap tree. I think it's very important to recognize the work of Allison Bailey and Kevin Simmons, because that is a lot of work every year. And they do have a group of volunteers, but that raised $8,200 for the Open Door program this year. And based on the amount of buoys I'm seeing on the tree, I think we can expect a similar, if not better, year this year, which is saying a lot because of the amount of funds they raised last year. And as well, the parade, I know it was increased, but that was the efforts of a lot of people. The Chamber of Commerce got involved. The BIA actually funds businesses to decorate downtown. They're a big driver, as well as the town staff, of making the downtown look so good. As well, we have a Christmas committee in town. Vicky Hogarth, they would call the chair. They meet regularly to put new ideas on the table, and we've got Sparkle coming next weekend. But to say the least, it was a magical weekend in St. Andrews. And I also want to highlight Santa's helpers. Councillor Hurdle joined us to read some pledges and answer a few phone calls. But it was a group aboard, and together with the community support of all of Charlotte County, raised $72,000, which is for families in need at Christmas, to be able to make sure that every child deserves a Christmas. So I just wanted to thank everyone that supported that. I'll switch away from Christmas just to two things. I do want to highlight as well that this is one of our last, not our last, but one of our last as just the, I guess you could say, 7 counselors and staff. We do have Mark Bennett and Annette Hardland joining us from Shamcook, and Daryl Ware joining us from Bayside. Looking forward to having a full council again and working with them. Just for the public's information, the council swearing in ceremony will be December 15th at 6:30 p.m. It'll be in the ballroom at the Heather Curling Club. There'll be a light reception after, so if anyone would like to attend that swearing-in ceremony at December 15th at 6:30 p.m. and get to know these counselors, you're more than welcome. And of course, counselors, you are obviously invited to bring anyone you'd like, guests, family members, whatever it is, open to the public. So, and then last, if that wasn't enough on the 15th, the 16th, we just announced today that there is an opportunity to go for public skating with Team Canada's junior team right here at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex, which is a wonderful opportunity. I'm kind of assuming that a lot of youth will take up that. It is limited tickets. It's $5. The money does go to Charlotte County Minor Hockey. So that is December 16th from 6 to 9 p.m. The tickets are on the Town of St. Andrews Facebook page and website with the link to Eventbrite where you can purchase them. They are limited. It is expected to sell out. In addition to skating with the Team Canada hockey players, there's an autograph session, but also Charlotte County Archives will be playing History of Hockey in St. Andrews video. And as well, there'll be hot chocolate and cookies provided. So that should be a great event. And again, all the proceeds of that go to Charlotte County Minor Hockey. So I had quite a few this evening. So with that being said, we have no reason to go to closed session. So I will be looking for at 7:28, not bad, a mover to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Akaji and Councillor Gumashel, who had the most, I think, you moved the most tonight. It must be the shirt and tie. I don't know. He's quick on the draw. We've got a second. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And we are done. Thank you, everybody, again.